Die! Die, Camden tablet, die! After 3 or 4 days of stirring your mixture, you're going to get to a point where it's time to add the rest. Now, you want to make up at least 4.5 to 5 litres worth of juice. So it's a good idea to make sure that you've got enough containers handy and that you have a brewing vessel. So I'm going to use the same glass demijohns that you've seen me use in previous videos for mead. Here's our brewing vessel. Yep, as I said, standard glass 5 litre demijohn. This one I've added a thermometer to the front to show you. It's currently about 60 degrees. A little bit chilly. Chillier than I'd like. But there we go. I'm just going to wash this because it's been sitting in the cupboard and it's got a little bit dusty and could always do with a bit of a clean. Naturally, as well as giving it a wash, you want to sterilise the inside of it. Again, that's no big deal. If you've got some standard sterilising solutions, some Star San, or even some Milton's baby bottle washer. Now, that's actually probably one of the easiest ones because you don't have to rinse it. It isn't going to affect the flavour. And as long as you make sure that it's completely, you've drained out everything, then it's not really going to be a problem. There's little to no residue for that. It's designed to sterilise baby bottles. I've also sterilised the rest of my equipment, and I've also boiled one of my muslin bags in water for 15 minutes. Although do make sure to let it cool down again before you try and take it out, otherwise you'll burn yourself. Once you've sterilised and cleaned everything you need and you're ready to go, it's time to strain the brew through a muslin cloth. Basically just to get out all the pieces of seed and skin, and so you end up with just the juice. Now, you might have to do this a couple of times through different cloths or through a sieve. If you have a nylon sieve, then or a muslin cloth, it should be enough. But just in case, you might want to run it through both. I'm going to be using a colander with a muslin cloth over it, just to catch any extra bits. Now, one of the obvious things you don't want to do here is accidentally strain all your juice away down the drain. It's easy to do. It's easy to do in any form of cooking. So make sure you have, first of all, a large sterilised container, big enough to catch all the juice. Make sure you've sterilised this before you do it. Now, this is the point when you want to be extremely careful. You can, obviously, use a ladle to do this, or you can simply put it through. I'm going to gently pour this mixture through until it gets too thick and I can't pour it any longer. So gentle pour. Make sure you pour it gently, because the last thing you want is for it all to spray out, which again is very easy to do. Gently pour. This is precisely why I have my ladle. And continue. Obviously, if your muslin starts to get too mired in chunks of fruit, simple. Tip it all back into the original container, and then tip it back, and you'll find that a lot more juice comes through. Now, as soon as you've gotten most of the juice in there, you're going to want to do the fun part. Remember, wear old clothes because brambles, blackberries and raspberries and most forms of red fruit will stain your clothes. But you deserve a bit of fun at this stage. And give the bag a really good squeeze, because you want every ounce of juice out of here. I've actually reached the point here where my container is almost completely full. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is put this aside, clean the original vessel, sterilise it, and then put everything back through. And for that, I'm going to strain it through a second sieve, just to make absolutely sure I've gotten all the chunks out. squeezed about every last ounce of juice out that I possibly can. There's the last. As you can see, there's a large amount of sediment left in the bottom of the sieve. That's the sediment that's actually come out from within the muslin cloth, so it's passed between the fibres here. So it's a good idea to do it twice, just to be sure. You don't have to, but it saves time later in cleaning up, and it means you're going to end up with far less sediment inside your vessel once you start to ferment. And at this point, we move on to stage 2. For this, you're going to need 1.5 of these. That's a kilogram bag of sugar. So what I'm going to do is tip my 1500 grams, my bag and a half of sugar, into that and add 2.5 litres of boiling water. So take your saucepan, take your sugar, tip it all out. Now there's a lot of sugar in there, but we still need half as much again. So if you want, use it again, or old-fashioned way and measure it. There we go. Right, I currently have 2 litres of boiling water poured on top of my sugar. Now, the sugar is almost completely dissolved. Obviously, when you're doing this, be very, very careful with boiling water and sugar, because the combination is incredibly sticky and incredibly hot, and you'll give yourself very bad burns if you're not careful. If you're using a much bigger container than I am, then it shouldn't matter. Just pour the full 2.5 litres of boiling water straight on top of the 1500 grams of sugar. However, unfortunately, the container I'm using, the saucepan, only holds just over 2 litres of liquid. So 2 litres of liquid plus the sugar, and it's almost full. I've only got about an inch of space left at the top, so just keeping things extra safe. I'm just going to stir that until it's almost completely dissolved, and then we're going to add it back into the main must. Now again, being incredibly careful with this because it's very hot water. There we go. We've now got absolutely everything inside this one pot. What we're going to do now is leave this just to cool down, because we don't want to do anything with it until then. Certainly don't want to pitch the yeast in it before it's cooled down to a temperature of about 23 degrees Celsius, otherwise you'll end up killing the yeast. But at the moment, the best thing to do, present, would probably be to take a sample and put it in the hydrometer. I'm not sure of how clear that is, but we're sitting there at approximately 90. I'm going to go off and find out exactly what that means. Well, the must is now cooled down to a warmish temperature, certainly nothing to bother the yeast. So at this point, it's a perfectly good idea to pop open the yeast nutrient, put in 1 teaspoonful of that, then we're going to add our yeast, and then we're going to stir it carefully with the stirring spoon, which has just been sanitized. For this, I'm using an all-purpose red wine yeast that I picked up online. Just going to pour the whole of it in, gently over the top. Just to get it mixed in good. I can smell the yeast. There we go. should get to work quite soon. So, at this point, it's perfect time for us to rack into the demijohn. Well, surprisingly enough, I ended up with slightly more liquid than I expected, which shows that you should pay very close attention to recipes and also be slightly wary of the measurements they use. As I said, I used 4.5 litres of water overall, added to the juice of 2 kilograms of blackberries. I've ended up with, as you can see, the majority of one 5 litre demijohn filled, the 1.5 litre demijohn filled up again to the shoulder, and another one half full. So there you go. Be wary of the measurements, and always make sure you have a few extra sterilised bottles, which luckily I did. So as you can see, I've got the airlock on the main one. I've used balloon airlocks on the other two. Not ideal, but yeah, you use what you can. I probably, looking at it, could have actually just filled the second demijohn that I own, but I'm going to hang on to that for the moment because there is still actually a fair amount of fruit coming off that bramble bush, and I quite fancy making myself another melomel. This time one with added fruit to it. Definitely using the brambles that I have. I think that might be quite nice, and I can have that running in the background. I can just grab another water picture and fire it up there. So yeah. That's it. Happy Homebrew Wednesday. I'll see you all next week.